Welcome back, seedlings. It's summer.
It is.
It's summer harvest.
It is. It's a summer harvest rainbow style.
And there's a storm coming.
I know. You see that? Like that's me every time. Very concerned about whether I'm going to get my hay in or not.
What's the radar say?
Yeah, that's exactly.
What's on the radar?
Exactly.
Looks like the world's gonna end. Am I gonna die?
Wet hay is not good hay. So, it's important.
I have no idea what we talked about last time.
Not a clue.
And I have no idea what we're gonna talk about this time.
Not a clue.
What do you think, seedlings? What are we gonna talk about?
Yes. They just answered back, we know you guys well enough now to know.
They think there's a plot or a scheme.
I know. They're like, we've seen Mel in the Middle. We know. You guys tell us all the time. You don't know what you're going to talk about. And then you talk about something.
We really don't.
No, like, listen, what people don't understand is we were all ready for you to make a word.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you,
Changed
without
it.
any words, came and said, hey, we're doing a seed.
Yeah.
So,
I
here
got
we go.
Bibles.
Got it. You ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay.
Isaiah chapter 6. Let's go there. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 6.
Heard that before.
You have heard that before.
A dangerous place to go.
So, as seeds is this idea of like, hey, we're prepping people right for the basics, right? Sometimes we get off in some tangents that aren't super basic, but lots of times we're just been talking for a couple of years now on just basics of Christianity, right? And the basics of Christianity just take applicational things all over the place, right? That's the problem. What's basic for me isn't basic for you. Part of that is because of callings. Part of that is because of missions and ministries and all those things, right? How you're going to apply something is different than how I'm going to apply something in some cases. There are truths that just have to be applied, and then there's, okay, here's how my office would do it, here's how your office would do it, right? But when we look at Isaiah chapter 6, I want you to read like the first few verses for me until I get stuck, which is going to be verse 1, but it's okay, we'll try.
You know, I like this.
I know. So you could talk about it the whole time. So that's why I'm going to talk first. Here we go.
Tricky. All right, Isaiah chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple.
Okay, so you can stop right there because I knew I wasn't going to get past that. I literally love this verse, right? I am so in love with this verse for many reasons, and everybody's like, what, why? What's there about this verse, right? This is chapter 6 of the book of Isaiah, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, out of the blue, Isaiah says, hey, I suddenly saw God, right? I saw God differently than before. Up to this point, Isaiah's heard God. God's given him a message, is what God told me to go tell these people, so I went and told them. The first 5 chapters of Isaiah are God speaking to Isaiah, and Isaiah going and telling people stuff. But in chapter 6, we get this total new thing. All of a sudden, Isaiah sees God.
Yeah.
Right? There are lots of us that are hearing about God all the time, aren't we?
It's true.
We go to church, we go, we do our devotions, we're at home, we're at play, we're wherever. We hear about God all the time, right? And sometimes God gives us a message for people, and we go do it. But there is a humongous difference, isn't there, between the moments where we hear God and the moments where we see God.
Yeah, big difference.
So how do we talk to our seedlings, saplings, and treelings, right? How do we talk to people about this whole thing, right? Like, you're going to have these moments, these moments where the basics level up because you go from just hearing about God, and then going out and saying that same stuff, right? So the truth is, our pastor tells us on Sunday a bunch of stuff, and then we go out through the week and we regurgitate it to people and like, oh, my pastor said, my pastor said, my pastor said. But every once in a while, we're in the scripture, or we're just doing life, and we see God all of a sudden in a totally different way than we've seen him before.
Yeah, that's a little different than this.
Mm-hmm.
This is quite the level up.
Yep.
This is a few steps.
No, this is a big moment.
This is a big jump. You know, it's funny. We just talked about this in Mel in the Middle, right? Like,
Yep.
I think I said it on the show, but yeah, sorry, you gotta watch Mel in the Middle. I really know what we're talking about. That's not a plug. It's just the best show ever. But I said it to some people while I was watching the show with them. Is that, like, I said, God took Mel in the Middle to the streets, right? Because, like, we talk about stuff all the time, and this is like church. It's no different, right?
Yep.
You sit and you talk with somebody about the Bible. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this on this day of the week, and blah blah blah, and then you go out into real life, and it's like, for most people, it's not the same.
Nope.
For most people, it's not the same, and it is definitely different when God takes that to the streets. Now, you really have to take it to the streets. It wasn't God taking Mel in the Middle of the streets. It's God calling us on what we say at church.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's God saying, oh, okay, you're going to tell everybody that? All these people? This could be millions of people watching.
Yeah.
If God allowed it, right?
Yep. Yep.
So are you going to tell millions of people that you're like this and then not be like this? So, like, he's doing that all the time, whether you are going to church or not. Even if you have a conversation with one person,
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
God is calling you on it all the time and calling your bluff. It's whether or not, first of all, you hear it. And then secondly, what you do with it. But if you do obey and you listen and you are really seeking to do those things that you're talking about, you will see God all over it. Like, if you watch Mel in the Middle, you'll hear the story and see all the things, and how many people through just a couple small things could see God. I
Yep.
mean, it's just it's kind of mind-blowing. But yeah, God's gonna call you. He's gonna call your bluff, and so be careful what you say. Be careful what you declare and what you wish for and what you hope for. And I even say, be careful what you sing in your worship songs, because God's gonna call you on that too. Like, what you're asking in these songs, like, He's listening. So you can see as much of God as you want.
Yep. I think it's interesting in this first verse that it also has to do with in the year that King Uzziah died. Right? So again, sometimes we're going through life, we're bebopping around, and then something happens, tragedy hits, something happens, and it gets us to see God differently.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't have to be somebody dies. It could be a job change. It could be a relationship change. It could be all kinds of different stuff. But there's those moments where all of a sudden what we've talked about, all of a sudden God's saying, yeah, you've talked enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's kind of what this was with Isaiah. Like, this was an opportunity for him.
Yep.
Uzziah was great, and Ahaz was a nightmare.
Yep.
And he was up.
Yep.
You know, like, he was going through his training process, and it's like, oh, guess what? Now it's going to be hard.
Yep.
And now you're going to have to figure out how to do this. And obviously there's more kings after this that Isaiah has to deal with, but this was an opportunity for him.
Exactly.
Because God knew what was coming, but Isaiah didn't know yet.
But it's also interesting to me that you said it a little bit earlier. Like, we get opportunities to see God. We have to be willing to see God.
Yeah.
Right? And when things
gotta
are going
hear.
well, when things are going great with King Uzziah, right? All of a sudden we get a King Ahaz,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden life changes.
Oh, yeah.
And now all of a sudden the need to see God.
But, like, what if he
changes.
didn't see God before that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what if he was just like, what the heck, God? Like, we all are. Like, oh, man, I don't understand. Why are you punishing me? Why is this happening to me? Right? Like,
Yep.
I'm being persecuted.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe if you paid attention to when God was trying to tell you things and show you things and give you these words, then you would be ready for an Ahaz.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't see things clearly because we don't want to.
Yeah, of course.
We're not ready for those things, like you're
Right.
saying. We're not paying attention. We're not looking for the things.
Well, it's exactly what I said to Mel in Mel in the Middle about, like, we think everything that God wants us to do or asks us to do or every interaction is this
Yep.
scary thing. Like, we assume that if God's going to call us to do something weird, that, you're just going to be sitting here a normal person one day and he's going to call you out in the middle of, Yankee Stadium to give a speech to people about Jesus.
I wouldn't be there. So, yeah.
He could.
Yeah. You
But
could.
it's highly unlikely that you're going to go from nothing to that. Like,
Yep.
God's not stupid. He's God. He made you. He knows we shut down in those moments. Like,
Yeah.
we can't do that. You
Yep.
can't go from nothing to, prophet advisor to Ahaz.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like, there's steps and there's levels, and God starts you off easy. It's exactly what I said to Mel. Like, he starts you off with these little test things, these little things. Like, will you be obedient and drive to this church?
Yep.
Will you be obedient and just mention this one thing in your sermon that's not really out there that no one would catch? No one.
Yep.
I didn't catch it, and I look for that stuff like crazy.
Yep.
Like, little tiny things, and here's a lifeboat to sit in while you do it. You know, we just assume God is gonna, like, pluck you out of your job at Walmart and say, here, go part the Red Sea.
Yep.
Like, there's training, there's process, God knows how we are. It's not that scary when you go through the process.
We forget sometimes that the training, God values even outside training. We're always thinking that if it's not in a church, if it's not in ministry, all of Moses' 80 years of training
had nothing to do with
was
church.
outside of the Israel people.
Yeah.
Like, literally, he 40 years.
David, you talk about that all the time.
Yeah. Like, I think I think what you're saying is super relevant.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we need to be ready. We need to be anticipatory that God is going to use us, that God is going to show up, that we can see him.
Yeah.
But sometimes our circumstances dull our senses.
Yeah. But we don't know any of this stuff because, like, nobody writes about that. Nobody writes about, like, oh, Summer listened to God in the shower and went to a different church that day. They write about the thing 20 years from now that precipitated out of that through 12 different people. That's what they write about. Yep. The big thing, right? And it's like, well, really, here's the training process that these people were in, and this little tiny thing, and like that's the stuff that if people knew and understood, like, they would probably be a lot different.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Seedlings would turn into trees.
But we, like you said, we don't connect the dots for people very often.
But we also don't like, who's going to tell you this? Who's training you?
Yeah, well, you are, because one of the things that people need to do, not just watch Mel in the Middle, go back to the reflections where you're talking about making sure that you're praising God in the process, not just at the end of the process.
Yeah, there's a process.
Right? Again, are we praising God for the fact that we got to plant, that we got to water? Are we just always about praising God for the harvest?
Yeah.
Right? If we're waiting for the harvest, then we're going to wait 20 years. We would have never said anything about Mel in the Middle. Right?
We just want something big. We want something big. And
no,
most people would look at what happened at Mel's Church on Sunday as not something big and not even worth mentioning.
Yeah. We would want, this, like, oh, well, if 20 million
but nothing
people
happened.
20 million people get reached by some guy in science, we would do that. Now they don't have to watch Mel in the Middle, but
yeah, they do. They don't get it.
That'd be fantastic. All right, listen, this is a fantastic place to stop until
I agree. We didn't talk about any of this.
Next week.
There's nothing to do with this.
I know. Next week, I told you I was going to get stuck.
This is how it goes. This is why you all see in a course of a year, like 4 different outfits from us.
Yeah.
You must think we're really just boring people.
Yeah.
We really have to have a wardrobe here. See the things I worry about?
There we go. Start praying for Summer to have a wardrobe.
Yeah, get used to these outfits, guys. All right, seedlings, come back next week for I don't know what. We'll see. Adios.